On the weekly, Chainlink is still trading inside of this massive range right over here, where we have the range low that was being formed with several pivots over here. We saw a massive deviation below the range low right over here, and we had a successful retest of the range low once again right over here. Now we know that if you have a range low like this, and you deviate below it like this for such a long period of time, the next objective from there should be the mid-range. Now we can see that we deviated above the mid-range and we rejected the mid-range afterwards right over here. Price started seeking the range low area again. Now from here, it's super simple for Chainlink, guys. As long as the range low area over here holds, technically speaking from here, next up should be the range high. It's that simple when you trade a range. Now when we go to the daily time frame and we narrow it down a little bit, what has been going on right over here? We can see that we can divide this price section in several sections. We can see the price over here made a strong push above this high. That push above that high made a lot of people FOMO into positions over here. Let's break down this chart, guys. Those longs needed a low to cover their stop loss, and they placed their stops beneath a low over here. So what did price do? It started mitigating that massive liquidity pool that was resting beneath the lows over here due to this impulse towards the upside over here for a multiple amount of times. It mitigated it once over here, a second time over here, and this one I really liked. It deviated for a longer period of time beneath that low inside of that liquidity pool right over here. Now we know that smart money then accumulated their buy orders over here. So those buy positions are still active because they need an area where they can release those buy positions. Now where are the smart money players that accumulated those buys over here looking to unload their positions? Exactly around that range high over here, around $45. Now how can we profit from this move? We can profit from this move due to waiting for a trigger inside of the current area, the current price action section right over here. And I feel like we have seen that trigger. Because what we can see, when we remove the previous drawings quickly from the chart, guys, we can see that we also had a massive liquidity pool resting right over here for the price of Chainlink. Now we can see that this was the low that initiated this massive impulse towards the upside. So a lot of people, once again, that were longing the price over here up on that push to the upside, or were longing the pullback, they were all using this low to cover their stop loss. And we can see the price mitigated that liquidity pool once over here. And it formed a significant low because we know that once a low or a high tags into an important liquidity pool, it carries significance. So then that low brought us to a lower high over here. That lower high once again brought us to a lower low over here. So that means that the high over here that brought us to this lower low over here was a significant high as well. And if a low that brings us to that significant high also carries significance, which was the case over here, then that means that once we break that high over here, which we did because we opened and closed multiple candles over here above that high, we are looking at a high probability break of structure. So this one is a high probability break of structure right there. That means that the low that initiated that impulse, that gave us that high probability break of structure, which is not this low, guys, it's the lowest low over here. That low is the invalidation for our bullish thesis. So over here we have a clean invalidation for our bullish thesis that was also mitigating this demand area right over here for the price of Chainlink as well. So we have a very clean and neat invalidation, which is around $10. We have a very clean and neat trigger right over here because we broke through that high. And right now we can see that Chainlink is also mitigating an internal liquidity pool over here. So I feel like that we can start slowly but surely looking for longs right now on the price of Chainlink with our invalidation potentially beneath this low, or we wait for one more trigger before we open up a massive swing long position. $1. Honestly, guys, what's $1 to you? These days, you basically can't buy anything anymore with $1, but right now, you can use the dollar to get 14 days of access to what I think is the best and most authentic trading community in the space, Tribe Capital. All that you guys need to do is follow the first link in the description down below, fill out your credit card information, you can cancel anytime you want, and you'll get 14 days of access to the best trading community in the space, Tribe Capital. I'll catch you guys there. Now that trigger can then be found on a 4-hourly time frame, because when we look at the 4-hour right over here for the price of Chainlink, we once again, guys, see some extremely clean and neat price action. Because like I said, we had that internal liquidity resting over here. Okay, and we also had some more liquidity resting over here. So we can see that this low, guys, is a very significant low once again, because this is the low that mitigated both of those liquidity pools. That low then brought us to a higher high over here. But as I often say, even though this is a break of structure, this is not a high probability break of structure. It's a medium or significant break of structure that we're looking at over here. And we want to get a high probability break of structure in order to execute longs. So in order to get a high probability break of structure, what do we need Chainlink to do? We need Chainlink to sweep the low over here. If Chainlink makes a lower low right over here, what will happen is that the high that brings us to that low, aka the high right over here for Chainlink, becomes a significant high to break. Now, since the low that then brought us to that high, aka this low, remember, that swept all of the sales liquidity, also carries a lot of significance, this high carries even more significance in my opinion. So what I want Chainlink to do is form a lower low over here. Then we need this high to be broken. And if I get that trigger, I will then start looking for a massive swing long position on the price of Chainlink upon this retest with my invalidation beneath that local low. And guys, we know the target because I explained at the beginning of this video what the target will be, and it's the range high liquidity pool right over here around $45 for a massive RR on this swing trade of 8.69. Whoops, you don't want your portfolio to drop like that, so make sure to like and subscribe, and let's keep things steady. When we take this last leg to the downside over here and we measure out the standard deviation levels, so we go from the low to the high and we get our standard deviation levels on the chart, I feel like the standard deviation levels are definitely in line with our bullish bias, because we can see that the -2.5, -2 area, this one over here, exactly aligns above that mid-range level, but also exactly aligns above that massive liquidity pool that we have resting above this high over here around $27.21. Now we know that the -2, -2.5 area often provides a pullback back towards a discount. So that would mean that once price pushes towards that -2, -2.5 area over here, we tend to see a retracement back into the discount before getting a push indeed towards that -4 level. Now this -4 level is not exactly aligning with that range high. So that means that I would take profit at this -4 level instead of the range high level. Why? Because this -4 level often tends to be the end of an impulse. And also this -4 level needs to align in order to be the end of an impulse with an important liquidity pool. And guys, it exactly aligns above this massive liquidity high that we have resting around $38.31, which we can see, because this is the high that gave us this final impulse to the downside. So there will be massive liquidity resting above that high. And this could be the perfect area where smart money that accumulated their positions over here, that also accumulated their positions over here, is looking to unload those long and buy positions and to potentially accumulate shorts. So if you get a push towards this -2, -2.5, expect a pullback in towards a discount again before getting an impulse towards the -4. And once we tag that -4 level, once we tag that massive buy-side liquidity pool above $38.31, this is where you should be taking profits on your Chainlink swing long position, and also even take some profits on your Chainlink spot position, because this might be an area where smart money pushes the price towards before it slowly starts distributing over here, before potentially getting another leg towards the downside on Chainlink.